Jordan, what, his fadeaway or whatever. Like, what do you take away from me?
You heard that right. Paul Pierce actually said he's a better player than Michael Jordan. But here's the thing. This isn't just about one bad take. It's about a Hall of Famer who allowed his ego get the best of him. Today, we're breaking down how the truth became one of the NBA's biggest deluded players, from claiming he's better than Jordan to his takes on Steph and KD. Oh, and wait till you hear what he has to say about Wade. Trust me, this is the wildest thing you've heard in a while. Before we get into the chaos, you need to remember that Paul Pierce wasn't always the guy making viral, delusional quotes. Once upon a time, he was that dude. He was the face of the Boston Celtics in the early 2000s, and when the Big Three formed, he finally had the help he'd been begging for. Kevin Garnett's defense, Ray Allen's shooting, and that raw Boston energy. The result of that was a championship in 2008, with Pierce taking home Finals MVP after going toe-to-toe with Kobe Bryant.
According to Phil Jackson, is still the heart and soul, draws the foul, banks it in, and one!
At that point, people actually respected the trash talk. He wasn't just talking, he was backing it up. He gave the league some unforgettable moments. The wheelchair game, where he left with what looked like a career-ending injury, only to roll back in minutes later like a WWE comeback.
They brought him in the back, put him on the wheelchair, and now obviously being examined. The shot before is back there.
Plus the game winners against LeBron, clutch buckets that broke arenas, and a reputation as one of the toughest wings in basketball. Even the haters had to admit he was real. Paul Pierce was a hooper in every sense. He was crafty, strong, confident, and absolutely fearless. But the thing about Pierce? He's always had a little too much confidence. Even at his peak, that ego was visible from space.
They got it in Pierce's hand. Harrington talking to Pierce. And Joe DeRosa telling him to shut up.
Ask anyone who played against him. He loved to remind you what he'd done after every shot. Trash talk was his second language. He once said he didn't call himself the truth, Shaq did, after Pierce dropped 42 on the Lakers, and he never let the world forget it. That's the thing about Pierce. He thrived on proving people wrong, but eventually, the world stopped doubting him and that energy had nowhere to go. Once the applause faded, that confidence started echoing back like an empty gym. Even during his prime, some people found him unbearable. They said his game was slow, his style was old school, and his talk was too loud for what he actually achieved. And honestly, that was valid. Fast forward to now, and those same habits, the pride, the trash talk, and the obsession with respect, don't play the same way. Now it just feels like he's chasing a spotlight that moved on years ago. That's the tragedy of Paul Pierce. He's a Hall of Famer who can't accept that his story already ended. And every time he opens his mouth about LeBron, KD, or Steph, it sounds less like confidence and more like a man trying to rewind time. He still talks like he's the main character in the league, but the league moved on a long time ago. And that's exactly why his new comments hit differently. With all the nonsense he's been saying recently, it's too obvious that he's trying to reclaim relevance. He wants people to talk about him again, even if it's for the wrong reasons. So when he showed up on Club Shay Shay and started spewing trash, it wasn't random. It was the latest chapter in his long war against modern basketball. You'd think he'd chill, right? Nope. The man went on and said he once beat Steph Curry in a three-point contest. Yeah, Steph Curry. The same guy who turned the three-pointer into an art form, apparently lost to Paul Pierce in Pierce's personal multiverse.
Since Larry Bird, and you beat Steph Curry.
Right.
So
I'd always tell people
that's the thing. See, it's not just winning the three-point competition, it's who you beat in order to win the three-point competition.
He said it proudly too, and talked about how Steph was just a rookie at the time, and how he was competing with him. Like that somehow puts them in the same category.
I say, hey, Steph Curry was in the contest. They'd be like, oh, he was a rookie. It was still Steph.
And look, maybe they did shoot around one day, maybe Pierce did hit a few more that afternoon. But outrightly saying you beat Steph in a shooting contest without proper context is like saying you outran Usain Bolt at a neighborhood race. When that clip hit the internet went crazy. Fans were roasting him like it was open mic night. Comments like, Pierce must have been playing on rookie mode. Was Steph shooting left-handed that day? Were flying around. Even Shannon Sharpe couldn't keep a straight face. He literally leaned back in his chair laughing because how else do you respond to that? Let's put this in perspective. Steph Curry isn't just good at shooting, he's the standard. The man knocked down 402 threes in a single season. The first player ever to average over 5 made threes per game, with a career average sitting around 43%. And that's not even counting the difficulty. These aren't open catch-and-shoot looks. They're off the dribble, from 30 feet out, with defenders hanging on him. Pierce was a solid shooter for his time, sure, but he never even cracked 40% from 3 in a season. His career average sits closer to 36%. It's good, but not historic, so comparing his jumper to Steph's is like comparing a candle to a solar flare. The funniest part is that Pierce genuinely seems to believe it. Like, deep down, he's convinced that moment validated him as a shooter. And that's what makes it so funny. It's not even trash talk this time. It's nostalgia mixed with denial. He still sees himself as the guy who could go toe-to-toe with the next generation. So after claiming he beat the greatest shooter alive, you'd think Pierce would stop there. But nope, he doubled down, because apparently outshooting Steph wasn't enough. Now he says he's the best scorer in NBA history, a better scorer than Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, and Kevin Durant.
You did break the internet. You said you're the best pure scorer.
He didn't say he was underrated or one of the best. He said he was the best. At this point, you could almost hear every basketball fan in the world pause for a second and go, wait, what? Are we sure we're talking about the same Jordan? Because Michael Jordan didn't just score points, he hunted them. I mean, the man won 10 scoring titles, he averaged over 30 points per game in multiple seasons. And you know what's crazy? He did all this in an era full of hand-checking, physical drives, and defenders who were out to physically harm you on your way to the rim. Jordan's signature fadeaway, his off-the-dribble mid-range, his ability to create separation. That's the backbone of pure scoring for most people. His shots weren't just made, they were proof that he was really who he said he was. Then there's Kobe Bryant, who we all know was the player closest to replicating Jordan's scoring brilliance. Kobe didn't just try to be great. He did whatever it took to score in every way possible. He showed you footwork, post spins, jab steps, pull-ups, fallaways, and floaters, an entire arsenal of moves. He scored anywhere and at any point. Either under duress, against double teams, or in the fourth quarter of elimination games, he had that killer instinct. So, when Kobe said he was the best, you believed it. Because he backed it up, night after night. Are you seeing the pattern? These are players who backed up their words with action. Now take a deep breath, because here's where Pierce's claim begins to crack. His highest scoring average ever was 26.8 points per game. That's cool. It's a good season for a modern scoring wing. But it's not in the same category as someone averaging 30-plus in the finals, or repeatedly putting up 40-plus games. Pierce's field goal percentage hovered around 44%. Again, good enough. But compare that to Jordan in his prime, or Kobe, or KD, and you see the difference. Now his take on Kevin Durant is where this gets spicy. Pierce wasn't speaking about a legend he only admired. He faced KD directly. In 2012, when Boston squared off with OKC, Durant was becoming unstoppable. He averaged around 28 points a game with elite efficiency, and even though Pierce was still holding his own, the gap was too obvious. KD's pull-up game over defenders, his length, and his shooting from half-court, that's not something you can just shove away like it wasn't phenomenal. Fast forward to 2014, Durant's MVP year. That season, he shot around 50% from the floor, about 40% from three, and 90% from the free throw line. During that stretch, he went on a streak of 12 straight games scoring 30-plus. Meanwhile, Pierce found himself off the bench, splitting minutes, and putting up closer to 13 points per game. If you watched those Celtics versus Thunder matchups, you saw Pierce guard Durant and nearly get lost in his motion. The difference wasn't just numbers, it was ease. KD looked untouchable, and Pierce was just another good player. Now I know the question on your mind, because Durant's not exactly a quiet guy when it comes to criticism. He's responded to pundits, media, and players before. Remember when Emmanuel Acho had that weird tweet? KD didn't wait for a commercial break, he clapped back. Remember Patrick Beverley's comments after a playoff series? KD had a tweet waiting as soon as the locker room door opened. So when Pierce says he's a better scorer than KD, you'd expect KD to respond, but so far, we have heard nothing. And that silence? That's a stronger clapback than any tweet. So now we are waiting and observing. Will he respond this time? Or will his silence deliver the sharpest rebuttal possible? Let me be clear. Pierce was a confident scorer in his time. But the claim that he stands above Jordan, Kobe, and KD, that's just trash. Compare their bodies of work, Jordan's high-volume scoring in an era of physical defense, Kobe's relentlessness through injuries, and KD's effortless efficiency and versatility. Those are three different frames of greatness, but because Pierce lumps himself above all three, he invites side-by-side comparisons that always look bad for him. But here's what makes this all so embarrassing. Pierce is doing this on national TV. He's turning these wild statements into content and chasing next-day clicks. He wants people debating him. He wants people to keep talking about him, even if they're mocking him. And just when you think he can't possibly top that level of delusion, he does. His next claim is one that had both fans and analysts genuinely wondering if he was trolling. He said LeBron wouldn't have won his 4 rings if they were the same age.
If we were the same age, I don't believe he would have had 4 championships.
Yeah, and he wasn't joking, which ironically makes this whole thing funnier. Because if anyone watched those Celtics versus Heat games, LeBron wasn't losing because of age. He was losing because the Celtics had an army that had Kevin Garnett, Ray Allen, and Rondo. A full-blown all-star lineup.
Well, one of the things that LeBron James has trouble with is screens on the ball. He's such a big body, it's hard to negotiate those screens as he knocks it in.
Let's rewind to 2008 when LeBron was just 23, still figuring out how to carry Cleveland by himself. In Game 7 of that year's second-round series, LeBron dropped 45, Pierce had 41 but came out with the win. But what he didn't realize was that LeBron wasn't close to his final form. Fast forward to 2010, and LeBron's Cavs lose again to the Celtics. That loss changed everything, and a month later, the decision happened and LeBron joined Miami. And that's when Pierce's nightmare started. Because from 2011 onward, the roles flipped completely. The man who used to chase Pierce suddenly became the man Pierce couldn't escape. In 2011, LeBron sent the Celtics home in 5 games. In 2012, he buried them in 6, including that legendary Game 6 in Boston where LeBron dropped 45 points, 15 rebounds, and shot 73%. That night was basically the funeral for the Big Three era. And Pierce? He finished that game with 4 for 18 shooting. So when he says LeBron wouldn't have rings if they were the same age, what he's really doing is trying to rewrite the moment where their careers split in opposite directions. After 2012, LeBron kept evolving. He had 4 MVPs, 4 rings, 19 All-Star selections, and became the all-time leading scorer. Pierce's numbers, meanwhile, declined fast. By 2014, he was down to 13 points per game, bouncing between teams like Brooklyn, Washington, and the Clippers. And it's not just stats, it's impact. LeBron led teams deep into June almost every year for a decade, while Pierce became more of a veteran role player who hit the occasional clutch shot, but wasn't changing the course of a season anymore. And that's the thing, Pierce froze his legacy in time. He still talks like that one Finals MVP moment meant he was equal with the guys who built dynasties. I mean, the numbers speak for themselves. LeBron has 10 Finals appearances, 4 championships, and 4 Finals MVPs. Pierce, on the other hand, has 1 Finals appearance, 1 ring, and 1 Finals MVP. LeBron's all-time scoring total? Over 39,000 points, and Pierce 26,397. What about LeBron's playoff record? He's literally the all-time leader in wins. Pierce? Not even close. And yet, when Pierce speaks, he talks like LeBron's success came down to timing, as if being born 7 years earlier made all the difference. In fact, if you look at their head-to-head matchups, LeBron has the clear upper hand, 21 wins to Pierce's 17. And in the later years, it wasn't even close. LeBron dominated. So no, LeBron didn't pass Pierce because he was younger. He passed him because he was simply better, more consistent, more durable, more dominant. What's funny is that Pierce has been holding this grudge ever since. Every time LeBron hits another milestone, Pierce finds a way to throw shade. It's almost like he can't believe time moved on without him. Because what exactly did he mean by this?
You still believe 23 is his last season?
Is that this year?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this will be his last season.
But this beef didn't just start. It goes way back to that 2004 preseason game where Pierce was accused of spitting toward the Cavaliers bench while a very young LeBron sat there watching. Pierce got tossed and fined, and that moment was the spark. From then on, every game between them carried extra heat. For all the wild stuff Pierce says now, you gotta remember, it wasn't always like this. There was a time people actually respected the guy. Because before the podcast takes and the players' shade, Paul Pierce actually had a story worth rooting for. Pierce came out of Kansas in 1998 with the kind of footwork that made you think he could face anyone. He wasn't flashy like Vince Carter or loud like Allen Iverson, but he could play. The Celtics grabbed him with the 10th pick, and right away, it felt like they'd found their guy. Then, life hit him with something brutal. In September 2000, Pierce was stabbed 11 times outside a Boston nightclub. But somehow, he not only recovered, he played every single game that season. But the early Celtics years? Man, those were rough. The team barely scraped the playoffs, and Pierce was dragging a roster that couldn't keep up. The team around him was mid, the front office was clueless, and year after year, Pierce had to carry way too much. But everything changed in 2007 when Boston pulled the trigger on 2 massive trades for Kevin Garnett and Ray Allen. Overnight, the Celtics went from struggling to scary. Suddenly, Pierce had help, and that 2008 season became his redemption arc. The Big Three clicked instantly, Boston won 66 games, and Pierce finally got the moment every star dreams about: beating Kobe Bryant in the finals and walking away with the finals MVP. For a while, it looked like he'd written his legacy, but basketball doesn't stay frozen in time. After a couple of deep playoff runs, the cracks started showing. Age, injuries, and that new pace and space era hit the Celtics hard. Pierce was still productive, but you could feel the decline. The legs weren't the same, the defense slowed down, and the league had moved past isolation wings. When the Big Three era ended in 2013, Pierce bounced from Brooklyn to Washington to Los Angeles, and each stop felt like the ending was catching up to him. By the time he retired in 2017, the picture was clear. He'd had a good career, but he wasn't Kobe. He wasn't LeBron. And he definitely wasn't Jordan. And that's where his story turns from greatness to insecurity. Because instead of letting his numbers and legacy speak for themselves, Pierce seems obsessed with proving he was more than he was. Legends like Shaq, Kobe, and MJ didn't have to keep reminding people who they were. They didn't hop on podcasts trying to rewrite history. Their games and their legacies spoke for themselves. Pierce, on the other hand, keeps trying to convince everyone that he was on that same level. But the more he talks, the smaller that legacy feels, because the truth is, Paul Pierce was great, but not that great. A Hall of Famer, absolutely. A top-tier scorer, sure, but not one of the greatest ever. And maybe that's what's really eating at him. Not that time erased his name, just that time reminded everyone exactly where it belongs. It's one thing to be confident in your legacy. It's another to act like your career ended with a standing ovation from Mount Rushmore. Because when Pierce retired, he just immediately stepped straight into a highlight reel of bad takes. It started with the infamous Wade debate. On live TV, Pierce said with a straight face that he had a better career than Wade.
Paul, riddle me this. Who is the better NBA player?
That's easy. I can say that off the bat. That's me.
The studio went silent for half a second and then erupted into laughter.
So then who has the better NBA career?
I played 10 years with who?
You know what?
With who?
Antoine Walker.
Even Jalen Rose couldn't hold back. He listed Wade's accomplishments one by one, while Pierce sat there realizing the room wasn't exactly agreeing with him. And when he wasn't self-promoting, he was dropping the most random top 5 lists you've ever heard. It got to the point where every new list from Pierce was treated like a comedy segment. And that's the thing about Pierce now. He doesn't talk like a player anymore, he talks like a podcaster. Which brings us to the real question. What's with this new trend of ex-NBA players and getting on hot take podcasts once they retire? We're moved from proper, well-informed analysts to this new era of hot takes, shock value, and algorithm worship. It's not about insight anymore. It's about attention. Guys like Pat Bev and Gilbert Arenas have built entire shows on chaos. They've realized that being wrong loudly gets you more clicks than being right quietly. One wild sentence can do more numbers than a decade of highlights. And that's where someone like Paul Pierce fits perfectly. Because when your playing days are long gone and the younger fans don't even talk about you anymore, you either fade or you make noise. You can trace the shift back to when ESPN cut him loose after that infamous IG Live. Yeah, this one.
Come on, man. On you, bro. What would you do? What you do? What's the call?
Monica, you should be here.
It was messy, but it also revealed something. Pierce liked attention. He liked the buzz, even if it wasn't from a place of respect. Since then, he's leaned into it, posting wild takes, jumping into debates, and saying stuff he knows will trend for the wrong reasons. But there's a difference between a player trying to stay visible and a Hall of Famer trying to stay relevant. One's about hustle. The other's about ego, and Pierce's ego has always needed an audience, except now, it's not LeBron he's chasing. It's the algorithm. Paul Pierce used to be the truth, but now, his truth is whatever makes him trend. When you strip away the noise, Paul Pierce's legacy is actually solid, but somewhere along the way, ego started fighting memory. Instead of letting the game speak, Pierce keeps trying to argue with history, and history always wins. Every time he downplays LeBron or claims he had a better career than Wade, he chips away at the respect he already earned. He is living proof that you can be a legend and still not know when to stop talking. We acknowledge how good of a player he was, but let's be honest, this ain't 2008 anymore. So, what do you think? Is Pierce just defending his legacy, or is he flat out delusional at this point? Drop your thoughts below, because I'm curious as to how many people actually think he has a case. And if you enjoyed this video, hit like, subscribe, and stick around. Because the next story, it's even crazier than this one.